Me myself, I am a new artist. When it comes to working digitally, I feel like I can bring out more of the detail on traditional artwork because I grew up on that stuff, right? And I never really had access to any digital artwork materials or tablets or whatnot. So I myself am very much I'd say I'm pretty decent at traditional art, but when it comes to digital, I struggle quite a lot. I'm not quite sure how to blend and shade, and it's really difficult for me, and things just look fake. So that's where I am right now. I am a traditional artist transitioning over into the digital space. But yeah, I am going to be discussing a few points for both digital and traditional artwork. Okay, traditional art versus digital art. Right, now this has been a debate for as long as I can remember. I've even had a few people ask me which I prefer. To be honest, there's not much difference between them, and there's no right or wrong answer. It doesn't really matter. There are benefits and drawbacks for both. A lot of people start traditionally as they don't have access to digital art. But okay, to kick things off, digital. One of the great things about working digitally is that nothing is permanent. You can always backtrack on your stuff and remove mistakes with a simple click of a button. It's great when you're experimenting or if you're trying out new techniques or whatnot and they don't necessarily work out. You can always go back with little or no risk. This brings me on to my next point, which is that working digitally, it is easier to experiment. There's so many tools available, and pretty much at no extra cost. If you're using some software like Clip Studio Paint, you have access to so many brushes, so many free brushes in the store, so you do have a lot of options available to you. Whereas if you're working traditionally, you would have to go out and buy certain tools to get certain effects, which can be pretty costly, I guess. Another benefit of working digitally is the easier duplication, especially if you're working for like a client or something, and they want to see drafts of the designs or artwork that you're creating for them. You can always work on something, save it as version 1, make changes, save it as version 2, and just keep on going, and then show the client all the different versions that you've created. And yeah, it's always easy to revert back. You just open up a previous version and start working on that again. Another benefit is the increased convenience. Now, you don't necessarily need something lavish in order to begin creating art digitally. There are a plethora of sort of graphics drawing tablets that you can get for about 30 quid. For as long as I can remember, I've been using the Wacom. Actually, I'm not sure what it's called, but it was the type of Wacom that I was using for about the first maybe couple years while I was doing art digitally. Since then, I figured I should upgrade myself, and I grabbed myself an XP Pen 22E Pro, I think it is. But essentially, it's just basically a TV that you can draw on, and it's a great piece of kit. It will set you back about £400, but I think in the long run that comes really handy. This leads me on to my next point. Now although there are a bunch of options where you can grab cheap tablets, cheap styluses for your phones or whatnot, and even drawing tablets for relatively cheap. At some point you would want to upgrade, and a lot of the upgrades can get pretty expensive. So like as I mentioned, my XP Pen is about £450. The reason I spent that is because I like to learn how to draw digitally and create artwork digitally. Although there is initially quite a hefty one-off payment, in the long term it saves me from having to buy supplies and whatnot, because they do run out pretty quickly. And it was just getting annoying. I was spending so much money just constantly restocking my papers, my pens, my markers, my inks, everything, and I just got sick of it, to be honest. So I said, let's make a one-off payment, grab a drawing tablet, drawing monitor, whatever it may be, graphics monitor, and just start working digitally. So moving on to traditional art, I'm gonna be direct. there is going to be a lot more of an ongoing cost involved in this. As I mentioned, you'd have to constantly restock your supplies. Now this really annoyed me. Now as a small artist, I'm not really earning much money from it, although I am earning a bit here and there, which is nice. But yeah, because I'm not earning a lot and it's pretty much a hobby right now, which I'm trying to increase on. But yeah, because of that, and the cost of art supplies are expensive. They are really expensive, especially if you want the good quality stuff. You can get away with it with the cheaper things if you have the technique down, but having the better quality supplies does make it a lot easier. To give an example, right, the Copic markers, a pack of about six markers can set you back about £15. That's only 6 markers, right? I believe I got the skin tone ones, and I think they lasted about maybe seven drawings, 7 pieces of art. So they ran out a lot quicker than I thought, and I obviously had to buy new ones. And the next time I bought them, I ended up buying like 2 or 3, so I spent about £45 for how much? 18 markers, which is really expensive. And then not to mention you need certain quality paper with a thick enough GSM to handle all of that ink going on there, and you need there's a lot of stuff involved, which I found quite tedious. Next, I personally think when you're initially trying to learn how to draw and create artwork, I think it's better to grasp the concepts on pen and paper, simply because there's a tangible product in front of you, right? You have that hands-on feeling with something like this, and it's just easier to retain that information when you're creating strokes, understanding how to shade, and all of that stuff. And then later on down the line, I think once you sorted out your line work and understood like proportions and all of that stuff, then you can move digitally, because it's a completely different skill set to try and learn all that stuff digitally, and I think it's easier to do that on traditional materials. As I mentioned, you obviously have a more natural feel / vibe. You can see the textures, everything is physical, and that sense brings its own emotion out of you, right? That helps you retain that information and makes you learn quicker, I think. My next point leads on to the increased versatility of traditional artwork. Now, working digitally, you generally have a stylus and you're pretty much just doing strokes on a screen, regardless of what tool or software you're using. Now with traditional art, you obviously have scalpels, you have brushes, you have pens, you have pencils, you have straws, you have stamps, you have all these different things, different textured papers, which you can physically feel. Now all of those bring their own benefits along with them, and it gives you more of a broader understanding on how to use those different tools, which in turn, to be honest, can then help your digital artwork, because you understand how to use those tools, kind of the concept behind how to get them to work digitally. Okay, and my last point for traditional art, it provides you a situation where you're forced to problem solve. Now what I mean by this is if you make a mistake. Now, as I mentioned, the digital art section, you can always go back with a click of a button, right? Traditional art, if you make a mistake, most of the time you can't 100% get rid of it. So you're going to need to learn how to mask your mistakes. And I feel that working traditionally and correcting those mistakes helps you grow as an artist and develops your skill. So let's say if you've got the line work done, you've inked it, you've come to, blend a few colors together and you start painting or whatnot, and all of a sudden you realize, it's the wrong shade, or something has smudged and it's kind of smearing some of this portion. How are you going to cover that? Is going to help you grow, and understanding that is going to help you become a better artist. So yeah, those are my opinions on both digital and traditional art. Now me personally, there is no right or wrong answer, as I mentioned. Ultimately it comes down to you. I do think that if you are new, like myself, to this whole art scene, try your best to learn traditionally. Once you grasp the concepts, you can always transition into digital art later on. But I feel like to get the core principles and the understanding on how to do certain things on pen and paper will take you a lot further than having to learn that on a tablet or graphics monitor, wherever it may be. Those are my opinions. Let me know what you guys think of each below, and what type of artist you are. And yeah, I will be creating more of these narration types, you know, just me talking about different topics relating to art from the perspective of a very new artist who has relatively no technique. Uh, so yeah, let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys liked the video. Peace.